All right, thank you for joining me. My name is Josh King. I am the managing member at Tinderbox Marketing. And this is a continuation of a workshop that I did last week. If you missed that workshop, that's just fine. You can watch the workshop. It's up on Facebook and should be on YouTube over the weekend. It's also not important necessarily that you saw last week's workshop. Last week's workshop was designed to talk about marketing, advertising, and sales, how they're different and how they're connected and why they're important, especially in today's environment. And the reason why this workshop builds on that is this just talks about how to track that data and what data I track week in, week out for my clients and in my own business. So it can be a standalone. If you didn't join us last week, that's fine. If you were here last week, that's great. Welcome back. And you'll get the benefit of seeing now how we track marketing, advertising, and sales data. And why are those things more important now than ever? It's simple. It's because it's important to know if your message is being seen, if people are interacting with your message. And as I'll tell a story here in a few moments, it's really important to make sure that people know that you're still in business, and then to track those messages and to track that information. A couple tips for today. Number one is to start now. I will share a ton of this information following the workshop. So there will be a Google form that I will share the link to both in the Facebook event and in the Zoom chat box. So you can fill out that form, give me your email address and some information about you, and I'll send you some of the resources that we talk about today. There's going to be some spreadsheets that you'll want to get your hands on, and then a copy of the deck. But the most important thing is to start tracking your data now. I nerd out on this stuff and I track weekly. Some people track monthly, and there's a case to be made for both. But whatever it is that you decide to do, the most important thing is to start tracking your data now. The next thing is to always think about your goals. The data that we're talking about today should be in support of reaching your business's goals. And whether that's to increase sales or to add employees or to expand into other markets, these metrics should support those goals and help you decide if you're meeting your goals or not. And then last but not least, ask questions. Now, it's hard for me to answer questions when I'm in the presentation, but if you want to jump into the Zoom and chat along the way, I'm sure I'll be transitioning back and forth a lot so I can answer the questions. The first question that we had today was, when did I go all Grizzly Adams with the beard? People aren't holding back on the questions, but please ask questions, and then I'll open up time at the end specifically to answer questions. So I talked about this in the workshop, Marketing, Advertising, and Sales from last Friday, but I think it's important to just touch on this briefly. There is an important thing to remember when it comes to marketing and advertising and sales in times like these. And that story and that lesson comes from Post and Kellogg's. So dry cereal was relatively new in the 1920s. Post at that time was the category leader in the ready-to-eat cereal category. And during the Great Depression, Post decided to cut back significantly in its advertising budget, whereas Kellogg's doubled their advertising spend. They invested heavily in radio, and they introduced a new cereal during that time frame called Rice Krispies. And that featured the Snap, Crackle, and Pop that we are also familiar with. And the key is that Kellogg's during the Depression managed to grow their profits 30%, and their company became a leader in that category. And that's a position that they've maintained for decades. So the tendency right now in the current environment with COVID-19 is to pull back on marketing and advertising, and is to think maybe we shouldn't post on social media, or maybe we shouldn't blog, or maybe we shouldn't send the newsletter. And in fact, you'll find that the opposite is true. And the advice that I gave in the last workshop was that as long as you're acknowledging that COVID-19 is a real situation, that's a serious thing, and you're posting about that, and you maybe even add a special spot on your website for it, it's okay to continue on pushing out a message. The fine line is you don't want to come across like you're just trying to take advantage of people or take advantage of the situation. But the bottom line is people understand and recognize that business needs to continue and go on. When it comes to the rest of the workshop, we'll just talk about agreement on terms. We'll make sure that we're all speaking the same language. And I like this quote, helps set the tone for that. Advertising builds awareness, marketing gets clients to know you, and sales gets clients to use you. And the way I break that down is that marketing is the thing that we do to tell the story of our business. And that can include things like our website, social media, our newsletter. Some of those things are free. Social media, unless you advertise, is free. Business cards, on the other hand, are marketing, but that can be a cost associated to print your business cards. Your website might have a cost associated with your website, but we're not paying to reach people. When we pay to reach people, that's called advertising. That's where the term ads come from. You ask my kids who watch YouTube and they know ads and they hate them, but they understand the concept. So marketing is that storytelling piece. What are all the avenues that we have available to us to tell the story? Advertising is when we pay for that story to get in front of the audience, specifically the right audience. And then sales is the transaction. Whether that's online or not, sales is the piece when dollars exchange hands, right? Some assumptions and rules are similar to last week's workshop, and they're the same for this one. And this workshop is not designed to fix problems with your business or to cure any things that you have going on. So the first assumption is that you have a solid product or service. Doesn't mean anybody's buying it. It just means that you have a solid product or service. I can't fix that. This workshop can't fix that. An assumption I make when I do this workshop in the normal world and normal environment is that your space is awesome. Right now, physical spaces are off limits for most parts of the country. So we'll keep that in the back of your mind when it comes back to your physical space being a place that's open. But for right now, we'll just sort of leave that one out. I'll still talk about it from time to time. The other thing is, a rule here is yeah, buts don't apply. The tendency with some of this stuff is to say, well, yeah, but that doesn't matter for my business, or tracking doesn't matter, or yeah, but that doesn't improve sales. And I'm just going to put an end to that right now. Those things don't apply here. This is designed for people who are eager to start tracking data for their business so that they can learn what's working and what's not. The other one is you're willing to fix or do sales. So you're either willing to do it or you're willing to fix it. That's an important piece of what we're doing. And while we're going to talk about how to track sales and how to make sure that you're taking care of clients and responding in an appropriate way to your clients, what this doesn't fix is whether or not you're good at it, right? So we are just going to assume that you're willing to do sales or that you're willing to fix it. But workshop's not designed to do either of those things. And the other thing that we're looking at is you're willing to do customer service or you're willing to fix it. So these are all key pieces of your business. They're all key pieces to marketing, advertising, and sales, but they're things that we can't specifically address in this workshop alone. I kind of skipped through that one. So I want to make sure you have a chance to see all of those bullet points. I did it again. Oh, technology. You'd think we'd have a better handle of things by now. Okay, there we go. So now what I want to revisit and talk about is the marketing hub model. I'm a big believer in mapping out what your marketing strategy looks like, especially if you're a visual person. You can write all this stuff out if you want, but what we're trying to track here with this data and what we're looking at in this workshop are things like, what is the impact that social media is having, and are people responding or seeing your social media posts? What is the impact that public speaking is having on your business? Is that even something that we can track? Your website's a key part of this, but essentially what we're looking at is, where do people need to go to buy from you? Whether that used to be a physical space or still is, whether that is a website for e-commerce, or whether that's, they need to call you and schedule a meeting. Whatever the case may be, your goal with marketing is to send people somewhere, right? Your goal is to drive traffic. So we are trying to determine with tracking whether or not people are responding to that message, seeing what you're intending them to do. And then depending on what your location is, we can track that, where they need to go to buy, what that is. So I have a color choice tab blocking my slides. Is that still the case? I was just pulling up my chat. Are you able to see my slides, or are you not able to see my slides? Okay. Let's try this again. Sorry about that, gang. Here I am just chatting away. And you can't see my slides. All right. Can you see? Okay. You were seeing my notes screen. Well, awesome, Zoom. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay. So thank you for your feedback. Apologize for that. You can see the full screen now. Perfect. That's what you're supposed to be seeing. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. So hub model, this is what I was talking about. You weren't necessarily supposed to be seeing my presenter screen. That's on me. But we're talking about the hub model. So where people need to go to buy, that's the orange bubble. What are all the tools that you have to drive traffic there? And those are the things that we're going to track. And that includes the sales process and can even include things like your networking and your public speaking engagements. Okay, so what we're talking about with this is that marketing, advertising, and sales are all connected. Now, they're three separate things, and we do talk about that through even this workshop, but they should all be moving in the right direction. They should all be spinning gears, driving results. And if they're all moving in the right direction, how do you prove that? So I hear this a lot from people as I'm meeting with prospective clients and clients. I hear the one phrase that just grinds my gears, pun intended, and that is, I feel like my marketing isn't working, or I feel like social media doesn't work for my business. And I push back every time I hear that and say, I want you to prove it. Right? I want you to prove whether or not social media is working. And I want you to prove whether or not marketing is working. So I'll say, prove it to me. And people can't. Marketing and advertising, it's not about feeling, right? Now, there is emotion associated with our messaging. That's a different story. What I'm talking about is you don't get to say as a business owner, I feel like it isn't working without being able to prove it. And as a business owner, you should want to verify that information. You should want to verify whether or not you can prove that marketing is working. You want to verify whether or not marketing is working, or whether or not sales is working, or whether or not advertising is working, right? So we're getting beyond I feel, and we're getting into I can prove. As always, what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to track the engagements and the awareness of your customer. So your customer profile, understanding who your customer is, becomes important, because that's who we're trying to track here. These are the people that we're trying to track. We're going to talk about impressions. We're going to talk about engagements. These are based on customer interactions, right? So understanding your customer is important. The other thing to think about is we talked about goals earlier, and making sure that you have metrics or goals in mind as we talk about metrics is to think about what are your primary marketing, advertising, and sales goals. So what's your primary goal? Is it to drive sales? Is it to create interactions and engagements? What is your primary advertising goal? What are your primary sales goals? Then you have to think about what are your backup goals. And that can be broken into two categories. So this workshop is a great example for the first category. So the first category of backup goals is, do you have a primary and secondary goal? So my primary goal with this workshop is to have people in on the workshop, right? So that's my primary goal. I want people watching this workshop live. Now, for a webinar like this that I am recording, I could have a secondary goal. That is, I want people to watch it afterwards. That's a good secondary goal. And then a third one could be, did people know I was doing this, right? So did people know that I was doing this workshop, or were they aware of it? Did they see my messaging? Whether or not they showed up in relation to this third goal doesn't matter. The goal is, did people know I was doing it? Right? So my primary goal with workshops is always butts and seats. I want people watching it, but then the next goal is, did people know I was doing it? The other kind of backup goal is related more to once you reach a goal. So say you set a goal to get 100 new likes on Facebook. Well, what's the next goal after that, right? So don't just have that one goal, have your next series of goals. So I was working with a client where we set social media goals for 6 months and a year. So at 6 months, if we reach those goals, we reevaluate those annual goals and make sure we're still on track. If we don't make those goals, we reevaluate and we set maybe new goals for the year, but we're always revisiting in 6 months to make sure that we're trending in the right direction. And if we're not, what do we need to do? The other thing to think about is what metrics matter to you, right? What metrics are you going to track, and what metrics matter to you? So one of the things that I talked about last week, and I'll share it with you this week, is this Seth Godin blog. And hopefully you're all seeing this. And we're tracking in the right area. Don't steal metrics. This comes from Seth Godin, a blog post he wrote a few weeks ago. Basically, he's talking about a podcast that a friend of his was trying to get into, and the goal for the podcast was to become a top 10 podcast on iTunes. And Seth pushes back and says, why is that the goal? It's a common goal, and it's a very popular goal, especially when it comes to podcasts, but it's somebody else's goal, right? That is somebody else's goal. In order to create a top 10 podcast on iTunes, you're going to have to create a content that appeals to a mass amount of people. You can't create niche content. So like this workshop doesn't appeal to a large audience. It appeals to a very targeted audience, people in business, people in marketing, entrepreneurs, maybe people who own a business. So trying to create mass appeal content doesn't always work in a podcasting world. And that is why it's important for you to make sure you know what goals you're tracking and are they your goals, right? So whose goals are they? Are they your goals or are they somebody else's goals? And what metrics matter to you? Are they your metrics, or are you just basing what you're tracking off of what somebody else says? I'm going to tell you what I track. I'm going to show you how to track it, but ultimately you're going to have to decide what you think is important and what isn't. And then the last one is what we aren't measuring here when it comes to goals. A couple of things we're not measuring. One, we're not measuring social impact, right? So we're not measuring our impact on our community, the environment. We're not measuring those kinds of things. There's ways to do that, but this workshop isn't designed to cover those things. We're not measuring employee happiness. Again, there's things that you can do, surveys, to track employee satisfaction and happiness. The other thing we're not tracking, and I would encourage you to be prepared to think about, is what I call anecdotal evidence. So if you start marketing on a regular basis, let's say your first marketing goal is to just start posting on social media every week, three times a week, and you've never posted with that frequency before, you should see the fruits of that initially. And I've had multiple clients go from not posting at all to posting regularly, and they have people coming up to them all the time saying, oh my gosh, I'm seeing all your posts. You're so busy. You have so much going on. I can't believe how great things seem to be going for you. That's anecdotal evidence. What are people telling you about your marketing? Do they see it? Are people talking to you about it? Did people tell you that they heard about it? My dad is on Facebook. My dad is 72. My dad never, like, he might click like, but he never comments and he never posts his own content. So my dad is what we call a lurker in the social media space. He just lurks around and he watches what people are doing. But when I call him, he'll say, oh my gosh, it looks like you're having so much fun with the kids. I can't believe you went, did this, that, and the other thing. The kids are getting so big, because he sees it all. I don't know that he sees it all because I don't always see him click like, and he never clicks comment, but he is anecdotally, I'm learning that he is seeing it. And that's the evidence that we're not tracking in this as well. And you have to be mindful of that. All right, so marketing metrics. Let's talk about some things that are marketing and the things that you want to track. Marketing is about discovering your audience and developing the narrative that connects with your audience. And that's a quote from Odell Palacio. And this quote reflects marketing in the storytelling piece. We're talking about storytelling. The good news for us is we get to figure out how many people are responding to our story or even seeing our story. And Seth Godin says it this way: our job is to connect to people, to interact with them in a way that leaves them better than we found them, more able to get where they'd like to go. Our marketing should be helping people get where they'd like to go. We hope that where they'd like to go is to our product or service, but that's our ultimate goal, is to connect with people, right? Doesn't say anything about selling. So here are some things that are marketing metrics that we're going to track, and I'll cover this list, and then my plan is to walk through a couple of these tools to show you how to actually track these. The first one is Amazon. So if you're selling on Amazon or marketing on Amazon, you can track your Amazon data. So that could be sales data, but it can also be marketing data, because it will tell you how many people see your platform, how many people see your store or your product. So that is marketing data. The advertising data is also something we'll track. That's another section of this though. Facebook Insights is their analytic data. It's the name they call, it's the tool that the name they've given their tool. Google My Business is also another tool that we have for marketing and gives us data. Instagram gives us data, and I plan to show you that live. I've been having a few technical issues today, so fingers crossed on that one. You have LinkedIn, your electronic newsletter, Pinterest. If you're on Twitter, you have Twitter analytics. If you're on, if you have a website, you should have Google Analytics installed. It's a free tool that you can use to track traffic to your website. Then you have online directories like Yelp. Obviously, you have YouTube, right? These are all things that we can use to market our business and are also all very trackable. So looking to go live, again, you should be seeing a spreadsheet right now in front of you. And this is exactly the spreadsheet I use to track for my business. This is the spreadsheet that I use every week. And I'll just give you a quick breakdown this, and I'll send you one. So I have a blank one here, and I'll send you a copy of this as a Microsoft Excel file so that you can have access to this. And what I do is I track some data individually. So I'm looking to track like Facebook individually, but then the top teal area is meant to be the cumulative data. That is meant to be the summary of the data. And when I track this for clients, what I'm doing is I'm tracking all the data for each social media site. And then I'm going back and I'm just reporting to the client on the highlights, right? So I look at total social audience. So what do I mean by that? Total social audience is all the people who've opted in to hear from you. That is all the likes that you have on Facebook, all the followers that you have on Instagram, all the people who've subscribed to your newsletter. So it's all of those added in. So if you look over the course of last week, and I track every Monday, and the data I'm pulling is from the previous Monday through Sunday. So the 30th here was actually the data from the 23rd to the 29th. And you can do this however you want. This is just how it works for me. So I got up in the morning, and on the 30th, I started tracking data for the week before. So on Facebook, I had 408 likes. So where did I get that information? So going to Facebook and then heading to my page, the first thing you can do is you can look at your likes. You can just track them from here. This is my followers. You can go down here and go, okay, I have 456 followers, 409 likes. Now I do know people that are tracking follows as opposed to likes because the number tends to be a little bit higher. Some people will choose to follow your page. That means they're gonna get your updates. They just haven't liked your page. So whatever case it is, you want to track that. So 408. So if I was tracking this today, it would be 409. So I picked up another one. Yay me. And you'll notice that the spreadsheet is designed to add this up. It's just a simple equation that you can see here. Then what I'll do from here is I can click on Insights. And this will take me to an analytic dashboard. And what this always does is it always reports on the previous 7 days. So if we were pretending today was a Monday, this would be the previous Monday through Sunday. Engagement is the number I want here. And this is where I have to give a pretty big disclaimer, is that tracking data in this space is a bit of a junk science. So I've worked up a process that works for me, and I'll walk you through that methodology. You're going to see some places where we're fudging a little bit. I'm never making up data, but I'm fudging either dates or I'm looking at something a little bit different. Now, this is one of those weird ones. So here they have post engagement. You'll notice with Facebook and with almost all platforms, there is a place where you can export the data to a spreadsheet. So I'll do that right now to show you what that looks like. In that spreadsheet, you will not find engagement. You'll find engaged users, which is a different number. So as an engaged user, if I clicked like on your posts, on 10 of your posts in a week, that would count for 10 engagements here, but that will only count me as one engaged user. So you have to decide which one's important to you. Do you want to just know how many people engaged with your page, or do you want to know how many total clicks, comments, likes that you got? This is that. This is all the clicks, comments, shares that I got. So that's the number that I choose to track. So I would head to my spreadsheet and I would add 107. And that's engagements. That adds as clicks. And you can see that comes right up here into engagements. What they track in this dashboard is reach. And the reach and impressions are two old advertising terms, and they come from TV and radio. Reach is the number of unique people that potentially saw your post while they were on Facebook. So you posted, they're on Facebook, they're scrolling through their newsfeed, your post shows up in that scroll, that's a reach. The challenge with reach is not every social media platform gives us that number. So what I do is I look to the spreadsheet and I look for impressions. What an impression is if I saw your post, if I saw 2 of your posts in the course of a week, I would count for 1 reach, but I would count for 2 impressions. So I'm always tracking impressions. So what I would do is I would go to the most recent, the time frame I'm looking for. And if this is Monday through Sunday, if I was tracking, so today is Friday, if I was tracking Friday through Thursday, I would look to the second. I just highlight that week to make things easier on me. And then what I'll do is I'll search for impressions. By the way, feel free to ask questions. I have the chat open. So if you want to ask questions, I can actually respond to those while I'm sitting here. So please feel free to do that. So back to the spreadsheet. Here's impressions. Now there's 3 that show up here at first. I get daily total. I don't want that one. I want weekly total. So this is the total for the previous week, right? And that's the total I want. So going back to my spreadsheet on Facebook, I had 1,153 impressions, right? So I reached potentially 1,153 non-unique eyeballs for 107 clicks on that content. What I like to track too, and it doesn't show up here in the cumulative in this spreadsheet, but for some clients, I do track this, is I track how many posts went out. If you scroll down on this dashboard, you'll see your 5 most recent posts. So I'm looking at the previous week, right? So I wanted, roughly the 30th through the 6th, which isn't true because I'm not tracking the actual Monday through Sunday, but basically any post that happened on the 30th or afterwards. So I only had 1 post that went out during this time. Shame on me as a marketer. So I would track this here. And what I'm looking for is trends over time. How many posts, like what's the secret sauce to posting? Do I need to get 3 out on Facebook? Do I need to get 5 out on Facebook? What is the secret sauce? So you could add another row here to track the total number of posts. And I do that for most clients. And then finding your reviews on Facebook anymore is a little bit tricky. So you have to head to page, and then you head to your review section, and they are blending now reviews and recommendations. And so what I do in some cases, I count them up manually because I only have 11 here, maybe 12. So I'll count those up manually. In some cases, it will report to you. And in some cases, you'll see this number here where it says 11. And then some of you might see another number up here that says this many people recommend. Whatever it comes down to, I pick the highest number. So whatever is either more, whether it's based on the opinion of or recommendations, that's what goes in here. So I've manually added them up before and I know it's 12. Yay, Facebook. That one's Facebook. All right. If you're ready for more, we'll go to Google, and Google's pretty interesting. So Google My Business is the map listing that shows up for your business. And I got to go to the right account. And what I'm talking about, and I'll show you, is this here. I can actually get the data on the number of times this shows up for people in search. That's your Google business listing, right? It's called Google My Business. So here's my dashboard for this. And what I want to do first is how many posts. Now you can post to this like a social media site, and you should. You can see I posted a day ago and then I posted last week. So I'll count 1 for this. Now their tool for analytics is also called Insights. Here's another thing this gives you. This shows you what terms you showed up for in search over the course of the designated time frame. So I showed up under social media services, Tinderbox, Batman, apparently, business consulting firms near me, NG Insight, that's another interesting one. So those are all the terms that I showed up for in search. If you continue scrolling, this is where you'll see your customer view on Google. And I'm assuming that this is not reach, that this is impressions. So during the course of this time, I didn't get a lot. That's okay. I had 15 views of my content on Google. So I report that under views, that's their term, but that adds up into impressions. And then I'll go down to customer actions. Now, what this is reporting on is the 3 buttons that showed up on my profile in Google My Business. There's the click to visit your website, click for directions, or click to call. Well, I didn't have any actions in the last week. That's a little bit of a bummer, but I can track that, right? And I'll track 0. And then what I'll track here is total number of reviews. And Google's pretty good to tell me. So if I scroll down to the bottom, right, it says I have 8 reviews. So I'll track that in the spreadsheet. Okay, I said I would show you Instagram, and I'm going to make good on my promise. So again, hopefully you're seeing what looks like my phone and all the text messages that I've received during this. And here is where Instagram lives, right? Again, hopefully you're following along with this. And here is where your insights live. So clicking at the bottom, I know you can't necessarily see where I'm clicking and where my finger is going. But here is, you click on the icon on the bottom right, and this is where I'll get my followers, right? So I have 283 followers, and I'm going to move these to the same window to keep things easy. So I will scroll down here and I'll hit 283, no growth, no loss, so I feel good about it. Here's why I stress doing this weekly. When I look back in time over the course of the last week, now I can see in real time what trends I'm experiencing. Am I seeing an increase or a decrease in followers? Am I seeing an increase week over week or decrease in impressions? Did I see an increase or decrease in engagements? Right? It's important to be tracking this data so that you can in real time make decisions. So if you have a slow week one week because you just didn't post enough, you can make that decision to post more in the following week. For those of you who are going to track this monthly, you'd have to look back at the whole month and then try to figure out what worked and what didn't. Weekly, while more time consuming, is more efficient for your business. So what I'll do here is I will click on the 3 bars in the upper right, and then I'll click on Insights. And you'll notice here it says content is 0. If I had posts for the last week, they would show up here under the last 7 days, and then I could switch this to say engagement, and it would show me the posts that I had and the engagement that I had in that time, and I could add that up. I don't have any, so now I have to post 0 and 0, right? So if I can go to 30 days to show you. So here is the last 30 days, and I had 2 posts in the last 30 days, and I had 14 engagements on one. Oh, sorry, you're not seeing that. So here is my post. So 14 engagements on one, 16 engagements on the other, right? So here are my posts. So tracking this is as simple as just saying I had 2 posts during these 30 days and then I had 30 engagements, but I am tracking weekly, so I'm going to track 0. Looking again at my screen, now I can push the back arrow and I'll hit activity, and this just gives me the feedback and the information I need for my profile on Instagram. And this shows me it's the last 7 days, it just defaults to that. And my impressions, see, it's 73, and my interactions with my profile are 5. So here under impressions, I'll put 73, and then under actions, I'll put 5, and those automatically add up. I want to briefly show you a couple more, but rest assured that every social media platform has analytic data in some form or fashion for you to track. Interactions, actions equal interactions, correct. So yes, so this could be interactions. You can see my spreadsheet has old terminology. I think in your spreadsheet I'll share, I actually have the terminology correct. So great question, yeah. So I changed that here, interactions equals actions, but I've cleaned that up. So great question, thank you. Okay, LinkedIn, a couple of things I'm going to track on LinkedIn. I'm going to track a little bit of personal data, and I'm going to track mostly business data. So I'll navigate to my business profile, my company page on LinkedIn. And from here, you'll see I have 89 followers. So I'll just jump over back to my spreadsheet and add in 89. Ooh, I picked up 1, yay. And then the data under analytics that I have found to be the most reliable and the most representative of what I'm doing is the one for updates. This is based on your updates, your posts that have gone out on LinkedIn. And I always just default to the last 7 days. They do let you pick a calendar, but I found it doesn't always sync up with my Monday, Sunday schedule. So I just pick last 7 days, and that gets you to the junk science. And this is where I said I don't ever lie, but we do kind of figure things out. And this is where I look at, they do not give you the cumulative data for the time frame that you select. You have to manually add it up, which is frustrating. And I'm going to anticipate a question here. Hey, Josh, it's 2020. Isn't there a tool that we can just pay for that adds all this up for us? Yeah, it's me. No, I'm kidding. There are tools out there that will do some of this. Hootsuite does some of this. You have to have a paid account, and then the last time I looked, you had to buy credits, and then you use those credits to pay for reporting. I know of a very robust tool that says that they'll track all this, and that is Zoho. And Zoho says they'll track all of this, but I've had experience using Zoho, recent experience, calendar 2020 year experience with this. And what it does is it gives you a breakdown by each social media site, which is cool, which is what we're doing right now, but it does not give you the cumulative data. I don't care as much about the individual data, right? I do, but what I really care about is in the last week, how many total people do I have in my audience? How many total impressions did I get? How many total engagements did I get? And the social media sites that I have found, the tools I mean that I've found, don't give you cumulative. You have to add it all up anyway on your own. So why would I pay for a tool that's going to do what I'm doing anyway, right? The other thing is that I've run into is they don't track all of them. Zoho doesn't track YouTube data, which I can grab on my own manually. Hootsuite doesn't track Google My Business data, but I can add that and track that on my own manually. All this information is available to you. You have to go get it. Is there a tool that you can pay for? I haven't found one yet. So back to actions, I'm going to add this up. So 9, 11, that's 20, 24, 28, 33, 34. I have to move some things around. Sorry, 34. Oh, so 34, that's my impressions, right? 34 impressions on LinkedIn in the course of the last week. And then again, with engagements, there's not one engagement number, there's multiple. So here I'll do all of the clicks I had. That was 2, 3, that's 5. Reactions, those are like likes, 0, comments, 0, shares, 1, so that's 6. Right? How many posts did I have go out? And you're gonna be shocked, oh, only 1, right? So what happens if I post more? The more you post, the more likely you are to influence these numbers. Look at how well I've done though with just 1 post a week. That's not me saying go and just post once a week. What I'm saying is you can get data from posting very little time or very few posts, but you're better off posting more. And a sweet spot, especially in the environment we are in, is like 3 to 5 times a week. That's what I should be aiming for. Then the other thing that I track here is my personal information, and that's how many people are in my personal network. And that's because as the owner of the business, my face is directly tied to my business. People know Tinderbox Marketing and Josh and Tinderbox Marketing. When I post on Tinderbox as a company page on LinkedIn, I am sure to share that out on my personal page. I don't get data on my personal Facebook page or my personal LinkedIn page, but I can track how many people I'm connected to. So I have 1,047 connections on LinkedIn, so I'll be sure to track that, right? Oh, and ooh, I'm up there 1 as well. One of the other ones that gets overlooked a lot in tracking data is tracking your newsletter. And if you're using a site or a platform like even Constant Contact or MailChimp, you get that data as a part of your account and your plan. Oh, what just happened? Tinderbox. There we go. Let's log in. Okay. So what I look at with this is, again, on the time I log in, if it's a Monday, I just look at the total number of subscribers. You have to pay attention here. I have 1,369 total in my list, but I've had a few unsubscribes over the years and people who've moved jobs and bounces and all that. So my real list is 1036. So that's what I'll track here. And I've lost a little bit of ground this week. That's a bummer. Then what I look at is I just look at the campaigns that I sent during that week. And I sent one, went out this last week. And so I'll track one. So I track this just like it's a social media post. So if I was adding these up at the top in total social media posts, I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 total posts for the week. Really, I should have 3 per channel. I should be at least 12 to 15 posts by now, but I'm not because I'm a bad marketer. I'm my own worst customer. And then I'm gonna look at how many opens did I have. I'll count those as impressions. Now, I know 1,300 people or 1,000 people got my newsletter, but I cannot prove that they even saw it in their inbox. What I can prove is did they open it and then did they click on it? So opens I'm counting as impressions and clicks I'm counting as engagements. So whatever those numbers were, 182 and 14, I'm tracking here. Does that make sense? So my newsletter gets added in and you can look, I'm just inching my way forward. So I don't get so hyper concerned on the performance of each individual site. What I'm really concerned about is the overall performance of all of my marketing. So skip over Pinterest. I do want to show you Twitter because Twitter, you can track both profiles, both a personal and a business one. And I'll prove it to you. I will log in to my personal account on Twitter and oh boy, let's go password tool. Let me move some boxes around. There we go. Okay. So your personal profile, business profile on Twitter, no such thing. They're all just profiles. And what I'm showing you here from my personal page, quote unquote, is no different than the business page. Now, you'll notice in my spreadsheet that I do track both my business and my personal. It's the same concept as what I talked about with LinkedIn. Me and my business are considered almost one and the same. And I don't do a lot of hyper personal stuff on my Twitter account. So I'm going to track that the same as my business. The way to get to tracking this is to click on more and then to click on analytics. Oh, somebody asked me, I'll answer this since I'm here. Would you recommend the password tool you're using over Keychain? Here's the thing with Keychain is Keychain is dependent on your device and having an iCloud account. And if you don't have it synced with iCloud, then your Keychain is only on localized or it's on your phone and your MacBook. So, and MacBook's only for, or Keychain is only for MacBook. And I have just found that 1Password for me works better. That's the name of the tool. And it works, it's cloud-based. I can have teams. So I've had employees in the past, and once this whole thing with COVID-19 comes to an end, whenever that is, I might have employees again. With 1Password, I can create different buckets of passwords and I can assign access to those passwords based on your role in my company. So I like 1Password for that reason. The other reason, again, is if you're not logged into your iCloud account and you're not syncing Keychain to iCloud, all those passwords are localized on your device. And if your device falls in a puddle, you lose all your passwords. So great question. Is it paid? Yes, not a free service, unfortunately. So Keychain, good stopgap. No joke. And I can even show it to you, or I won't show it to you, but what I started with was I had a Dropbox account and I had the free account when I first started my business. And I put an Excel spreadsheet into Dropbox and then I encrypted that spreadsheet, which is a quick Google on how to do it. It's like 4 steps to encrypt it. So that spreadsheet had a password and lived in the cloud in Dropbox. And then that's where I stored my passwords manually until I had enough revenue to justify paying for a password tool. So a little bit labor intensive on that front, but it was super secure and it kept my passwords in the cloud where I could access them. All right, so back to Twitter. I've logged in. I'm at 1289, which Twitter is so great to tell me that I've lost 5 followers. That's awesome. So by the way, reading between the lines, this is your opportunity to go out and help Josh and follow me and like me and connect with me on all these platforms. Shameless plug. So I look at total followers and then clicking on tweets. What I'll do here is I will manually select the last 7 days. So I would look at, so Friday, through Thursday. And I tweeted 3 times during that time. So I'll go back and hit 3. During that time, I had 721. Here's a quick note. If you get over 1,000 impressions, it's just gonna summarize it to 1K. And you can choose to manually add up all the impressions And I do when it gets over to 1,000. Like I said, I nerd out on this stuff. So thankfully for today, I'm under that. I'm at 721. And then with Twitter, this comes back to that sort of like fudging data, like not really lying. I'm not lying, but what I am doing is I'm looking for the best results. So here it's showing me engagements per tweet. And based on this, I have 17 engagements. You'll notice an engagement rate kind of clicker over here. And according to this, I only had 1 retweet, 1 like for 2 total engagements. So I'm going to go with the one that gives me the most. I'm going to go with 17. There have been times where I've logged in and the data over here is more. So I'm just going to pick whichever one gives me the better rate, right? So I'm not lying. I'm just relying on Twitter to give me what they consider to be the best information. And then the last tool I'll end on here is your analytics, right? So this is your Google Analytics. It's a free tool. It's free to install on most website platforms. You might need to get a web developer involved. You might need to ask a buddy. And I'll tell you this, if you're on this workshop right now today and you are not sure if you have analytics installed or if you need help with it, just email me after this, josh@tinderbox.marketing, and I'd be glad to help you sort this out at no cost. Shouldn't take a ton of time. So I want to help make sure that you are tracking your analytics. So just shoot me an email, josh@tinderbox.marketing, and I'll help you get Google Analytics either figured out, set up, or I'll point you in the right direction. I'm going to click on audience overview here to dig in. And this is one of those areas where you'll notice I track a little bit more data than what goes out in the summary. So real quick, I track users and sessions. Users is the unique number. Sessions is the non-unique. In this situation, they're both the same. So I have 47 users, 47 sessions, right? So they are the same, okay? And then what I look at for my engagement rate is I look at page views, because when they view a page, they're clicking on your site. Now, if you're really advanced with analytics, you can set up other metrics too, where you can track goals, like did they click on a button and did they do these certain things? I don't do that with my site. I just don't get the traffic to justify it. So you can see now I only had 59 page views, and that added right up in the top. Couple of the things that I track. Now, why do I track users and sessions? Is I want to know how many people unique went to my site and then how many were repeat visitors. So you can see last week I had 107 people visit my site, but 134 sessions. So not too many sessions above my normal traffic, but it just kind of gives me a feel for how many people in total are visiting my site. Then what I'll look at is total time on site. My average session duration is only 8 seconds, and I don't mind telling you that's embarrassing. I would love it if that was at a minute. I am not generating enough good content regularly on my site to warrant spending more time on my site. And what I mean by that is blogging. I am not blogging often enough. I should be taking advantage of the time that I have now to do it. I'm still finding myself productive enough to not make time for blogging, but blogging is a way to see that session duration increase. Then the other thing I look at is my bounce rate. And I would love it if my bounce rate was under 50%. Bounce rate is the number of people or the percentage of people that visit one page on your site and then leave. What it usually is the homepage, but if they entered in on a blog from a link, if they only looked at that blog and then they left, that counts as a bounce. And then the other data that I look at is this percentage of new visitor. I want to know how many people were new to my site during the course of that week, and it was pretty high. So I had a high number of people visiting my site for the first time. Okay, so there's the, in summary, kind of looking at this pretend week, and not great. And you can see here over time, I had a pretty good week last week, 653 engagements, 3,200 impressions. I actually managed, I shrank in total social audience. I'm not too excited about that. And then this week, if I was comparing week over week, I've actually had a down week. Okay, and the other bummer part for me is that this didn't actually make it to Facebook Live, which is why my numbers were so good last week. So if you look at my Facebook last week, I had 1,000 impressions and 101 engagements. That number is influenced here because the way that the time frame ran. So this workshop last week on Friday, but it not going live on Facebook means I'm not going to get the data that I was hoping to get and the numbers I was hoping to get, which is fine. I can upload the video later. This workshop's being recorded, so I can upload it later and hopefully get that information back or get that data back and get some of the numbers to increase. All right, so heading back to our spreadsheet, we're gonna walk through advertising metrics. A lot of what we just tracked will be influenced by advertising numbers. So Facebook ads, that number for your ads rolls right up into the data that we were just looking at. You can track out that data separately if you want, and Facebook gives you the tools to do that. But if you're running any ads in the digital space, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, or YouTube, your data will influence naturally. All those platforms, though, give you a separate place to track your ad traffic, and you can track it separately. If you're going to track it separately, I wouldn't roll it into the data because it's already there in the spreadsheet. But what I would do is just look how much of my traffic was quote unquote organic, and then how much was paid advertising traffic. So advertising is totally unnecessary unless you hope to make money. And what I mean by this is, should you run out and spend money on advertising right now? No, I don't think you should, especially if you don't have it in the budget. What I do think is that advertising is a surefire way to get your story, your marketing in front of more people. You have to determine if it's the right people by doing your homework and investigating the platform and making sure it's the best use of your dollars. The bottom line is advertising is a good way to get in front of more people, right? That's the bottom line. Here are some things that are advertising that we can track. Amazon ads. So once you start running ads on Amazon, they give you a whole set of robust tools in Seller Central to track your Amazon ads. Billboards. Billboards are metrics that you can track, and here's why. If you pay for a billboard, even if it's in Spokane or California or anywhere, the billboard company has the data, the survey data on how much traffic passes that billboard every day. So like a billboard on Division in Spokane, they'll tell you gets probably somewhere between 50,000 and 100,000 cars driving by every day or every week or whatever it is. So if that number really was 100,000 cars in a week drive by that billboard, then I would bounce back to my spreadsheet and I would add in under billboards, total number of billboards that I have active, and then weekly car impressions that they tell me, and then how much I spent. I would want to know, well, so 3 boards is probably going to cost me about $1,000 a board. So I'm tracking my number of billboards, like posts for social media. I'm tracking the number of impressions they tell me I get. I'm just relying on them. And then I'm going to track my ad spend, right? That's responsible advertising tracking. Okay. So some other things that we can track in this space are Facebook boosted posts or any Facebook ads. Google AdWords can be tracked in here, and that will be separate than your analytics, because you'll get the data on how many impressions your ads had versus clicks. Now, if they click on it, that'll influence your Google Analytics data, your website data, if that's where you're sending that traffic. Newspaper ads, similar to billboards, track it just the same as you do a billboard. The spokesman, any major newspaper that's circulated will give you their circulation numbers, right? Because that's how they sell you. They say, oh, we still distribute this to 80,000 homes, or the Sunday paper still goes out to 150,000 homes. Then if you're in the Sunday paper every Sunday, you would track one ad in that paper for the 100,000 or 150,000 circulation that it goes to, and then you would track your budget. These things are not trackable in engagement without a cost, right? And I'll get to that here in a second. Radio ads, same thing. They'll tell you how many people listen to your ads. Sponsorships, right? Before COVID-19 and even after, a big thing for like dentists and orthodontists is to put up sponsorships in high school gyms, right? It's a great way to reach your audience that's interested in what service you have. If I were an orthodontist and I was spending $1,500 a year to have my ad in the gym at the local high school, then I would be tracking that one ad. I would be tracking that ad spend. And then I would be tracking if they'll tell me what their attendance is. They may not tell you that, but Gonzaga might and Eastern might. They might tell you their average attendance through every game, or they might tell you their average attendance through the year. Whatever it is, you can track that data. Do the best you can. TV ads are similar to billboards and radio, where they should give you some estimate of what you're listening. Now, here's a caveat. If you're in a market like Spokane, radio and TV is still what's called a diary market. And that means that Nielsen sends a packet to people in our market, and they use a journal, a diary, to track what they watch and listen to. So you have to take that information with a grain of salt. What I said earlier was that these things, you can't track engagements on billboard and TV and radio without a cost. Now, in the olden days, when you had the phone book was a huge advertising thing, you would run an ad in the phone book, and the phone book would offer you, the phone company would offer you a different phone number that they would auto forward so that you could track the number of calls that ad got. And here's what's even weirder is they would give you, you'd have your monthly ad spend, and they charge you monthly to be in a one-time phone book, and they would tack that monthly fee right onto your phone bill. So I met with a client years ago, an insurance agent, who had something like a $3,000 a month phone bill because of all the ads that he was running in it, because he was under car insurance and motorcycle insurance and homeowners insurance and renters insurance. He had an ad in every one of those things, and for every one of those ads he had a unique phone number so that he could track the number of calls, right? So there's a cost associated with that one. When it comes to a billboard or TV or radio, you could set up a special splash page on your website, which is just a fancy way of saying landing page. You could set up a landing page that is specific for that campaign, has a specific domain. Those are costs, right? Somebody's gonna have to build that page. You're gonna have to buy that URL or work on your website, right? And then hope that the people who see your billboard remember that link long enough to get home and type it in. Or you can work with your phone company to get those extra phone numbers so that you can have a phone number routed to you. And there are some tools and some workarounds on this. I'm not the expert in all of that necessarily because I don't do it a ton, but there are ways to track your advertising when it comes to non-trackable advertising opportunities. Most what we call traditional advertising is not trackable in the new sense. Okay. Whew. Time for a pause as we think about sales metrics. You're tracking your marketing at this point, you're tracking your advertising, and that's all great. So as a business owner, you should never say to me now, I don't feel like my marketing is working. You come to me and say, my marketing isn't working. Like whatever I'm doing isn't working. I'm not getting the impressions I want. I'm not getting the engagements I want. I'm not getting any new reviews, and I'm not getting any new followers, and I'm not growing my total social audience, right? You can say that to me. Then I'll say, okay, well, how are your sales doing? And then this is where you can say, well, I feel like it's not working. Or you can say, well, my sales isn't working at all. We don't have the number of leads, because you're tracking it. Thomas Edison said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try one more time. There's an old saying when it comes to sales: every no gets you that much closer to a yes. And you have to take that seriously. If you're like me and you're the owner operator, that means you're not only doing the service that you provide or making the product, but you're also doing all the other things. You're also doing all the marketing and the advertising and the sales, right? So that's me. So I'm owner operator. I do all the work for my clients, but I also am responsible for all the sales. So every time I go out and meet with a prospective client, there's an opportunity for them to say yes, but there's also the very real chance that they'll say no. And that's not for everyone. Hearing no sucks. But what's worse than hearing no is not knowing how many yeses you get because you're not paying attention. The other thing that's worse than hearing no is not taking that no as an opportunity to continue the relationship. And I'll dig into that. This comes from Tiffany Bova, and she's with Salesforce. She says, how you sell matters, but what your process is matters, but how your customers feel when they engage with you matters more. One more quote on sales: practice is just as valuable as a sale. The sale will make you a living, the skill will make you a fortune. And this is what I'm talking about. No's are valuable because you can learn from them. What did I get wrong? Where did I miss? Was my price too high? Was it not was it too high? Was it too low? The other thing that happens when it comes to sales is that, and getting a no is, yes, it's practice, but every no doesn't mean you missed an opportunity, right? Every no isn't a bad thing. I've had plenty of people say no, and I was glad that they did because it wasn't a good fit, right? So it doesn't mean it's all a wash just because somebody says no. The other thing is you can turn that into an opportunity. Part of my business process is to do free marketing reviews for every prospective client. So if you're on this call, you can get it. Even if you weren't on this, or this webinar, you can get it. Even if you weren't on this webinar, you can get it. My website markets that actively. And the reason why I do that is, one, my mission is to serve God by serving others. But two, it's that in giving you something of value, I hopefully can build trust. So even if we don't work together, maybe you'll still write me a review, or maybe you'll refer to me down the road. That's an intentional part of my sales process, and I track that. All right, sales metrics, things that we can track. General data that we could be looking at is your weekly gross revenue, your projected gross revenue. So this is called forecasting, right? So weekly gross revenue, that's the real number. What's your projected gross? Do you see that going up or down? You can track that on a weekly basis. When I worked traditional advertising sales, I sold cable advertising in this market. We did this weekly. I met with my sales manager every week, and I was forecasting the rest of the month, and I was forecasting the next month. Right? So I'm always looking ahead, and then you're also always reporting on what actually closed, right? So what revenue is coming in and what revenue do you expect to come in? When it comes to face-to-face sales, and we'll use face-to-face sales with air quotes, face-to-face at this point may not be actual sitting with somebody, but it could be a Zoom call or a phone call or a text message. So what we're talking about is, did you interact with somebody in pre-COVID-19, post-COVID-19? We're talking face-to-face interactions. But in this new environment, if you had a Zoom call with a client or a prospect, we're going to count that. Client meetings for week. So I track the number of client meetings I have every week. I also track the number of non-client meetings I have per week. I track, did I lose any clients? And I track, did I gain any clients, right? New clients, lost clients. Those are good things. Total clients. You have to keep track of total clients. That's a good number to track as well. This gives you that information to go, do I feel like it versus I know it. So if you're losing a lot of clients and you're not getting any new clients, that's I know I'm losing clients and I need help. But if you just feel like you're losing clients, that's a different story. And when I started doing this, I started doing it out of necessity. I started tracking this data. I developed the spreadsheet that I'm going to show you here in a minute because I knew my business wasn't trending the way I wanted to, but I couldn't prove it. So I started tracking some sales data in a really rudimentary spreadsheet, and just the act of tracking it over 3 months, I saw my business increase just because I was paying attention to what was going on. And then what I track is total number of prospects. How many people are in the pipeline? If you have a physical location, or you could even consider it a website, but a physical location, even if you're doing curbside or whatever, you should be tracking weekly number of customers. I work with a grocery store. They track total number of customers every week, and they track average basket size. So how much did each person spend on average? And then they track total dollars. If you have a physical location, even if you don't, are you tracking the number of phone calls that come in? Are you tracking that data? And then total emails. Are you tracking the total number of emails that you get? These are all things that you could track when it comes to sales. Okay, and then real quick, I'll walk through some customer service metrics before I show you how I track all this. Weekly customer interactions, how many people reached out to you for a customer service concern? That could be through Facebook Messenger, or it could be through a web chat that you put on your website. Customer emails, right? We'll track that. Customer phone calls, we can track that. Did you get any new reviews over the course of the previous week? Those are all things that you could track when it comes to customer service. So now let's look at my very basic spreadsheet. All right, there's two versions here. The one on the left is meant for a traditional business, client meetings, prospect meetings, non-client meetings. The one on the right is more for, I think I had customized this for a workshop I had done for a medical thing. What we can do is we can change this one to be retail, and we can change this one to be like service-based. And you can, I'm gonna send this to you as an Excel spreadsheet, and you can change it however you want. You will notice at the bottom, I did build a real estate one at one point. So if you were retail, you would track total customers for that week, and then you could track total, sales. Oh, that's already in there. So total customers, you could track total phone calls, right? And then if you are a business that has any kind of membership, so like a co-op has a membership base, you could track new members. This data is all customizable based on your business. So it's whatever makes sense for you and your business, right? So that's up to you. You could track new members. You could track average basket, like I was saying with retail, average basket size, or you could track average ticket, right? So average ticket, and you could say, oh, people on average spent $20. And then what you could track is with retail, do you have any strategic partners or vendor suppliers or any other meetings that you should be tracking? And then do you track any workshops and presentations? So for my business, one of the top things that I can do to drive new business is things like this, where I can track where I do workshops and presentations. Oh, somebody asked a while ago, sorry, I missed it. Does posts include what you put on your Instagram story? The answer to that, Sam, is yes. If you post to your Instagram story, that is a yes. The challenge with Instagram stories is tracking the data on the back end gets a little tricky. But yes, you can. So looking at mine, I look at total project clients, total retainer clients. There's a difference for my business. Total new clients, lost clients, new prospects, client meetings, prospect meetings. So if I met with 5 people on Zoom last week, I add that up. And then you'll notice I do a little math. So anytime I have a meeting or a workshop or I send a newsletter or anything that's I consider sales related, I track that here as what I call total activity, right? And you could track your social media posts in this. What I'm trying to do is how many touch points did I have with customers in the past week? Like I was saying, I do workshops and presentations are a huge thing. So what I would do is I would track, I did a workshop and then in my own spreadsheet, I actually track how many people sat in on the workshop. So I could change this. I could add a column here to say workshop attendees. And there was a total of 12 at one point, a high point in this workshop. I haven't looked recently, but there was at least 12 people at one point, and I know Zoom will give me some information. So you can see here, if I had my math done correctly, um, my activity should actually add up this one too. So I would get the benefit of all those people. So I had 18 kind of activity-based things. So I'm tracking touch points with clients. Did I have meetings? Did I meet with prospects? Did I get in front of people? You could track networking events. You could track trade shows, whatever it is. Then what I do is I'm actually tracking my clients. How many clients do I have? And then is there any notes? And in this case, this is the retainer. So what is the retainer that they have? And and then I add that up. So I get a rough idea of what my revenue is going to be. You would rely on your accounting software to give you the real data. And then here under project, I have one project client, and then down even further, you can track your prospects. Super basic. There are tools that will do this. Insightly is one that I like, and it's free. What I found for my business is that I don't ever have that many clients at any given time, about a dozen clients at any given time. And Insightly took more time to manage than it was worth. And when I started tracking again, I started using this tool to do it, and it was because it was just easier. It was easier to do it in a spreadsheet, and it was more basic. So what I do now is I actually track this in the course. I track each one of these. I create a new sheet for each week. So every week has just one of these columns in it, and I track it week over week, and I track it just like I track my marketing data. And then I can start drawing comparisons, right? One more thing before I open it up for questions is anytime I have what I perceive to be, I call it a good week, and I set like the ceiling for that, or I set the floor for that, is I look at maybe it's engagements or impressions. But right now, my best week so far of the year was this 600 mark, but it also looks like I was able to hit over 300 multiple times. So what I might do is look at anytime I get over 300 engagements, I'm going to highlight that as a good week. And I actually change the spreadsheet to reflect that. So before we're out of here, before we take questions in the chat, and I will add this is going to be in the webinar chat, a Google spreadsheet that you can use, or a Google form to fill out and get the workshop information from this. So by all means, feel free to fill that out. And now I'll take any questions that you have. You can use either the Q&A option or the chat. They're both open, and I'm checking both of those. So if you have any questions on marketing, advertising, and sales data, I would love to hear that from you. Just double checking if this went live, and I don't think Zoom, nope, bummer. Couple more moments, see if you have any questions. Okay, so if you're interested in reaching out to me for anything, like I said, if you want to connect with me to help with Google Analytics, I'd be happy to help you out with that. Please just reach out. You can email me, josh@tinderbox.marketing, and I'd be happy to help you figure out Google Analytics for your website. And also, I mentioned that if you wanted a marketing review, I'd be happy to do that. I do those as a part of my process already. You can go to tinderbox.marketing and get a free marketing review. We'd be happy to do that for you and your business. If you're interested in how well you're marketing and what things you have going right, maybe what things you can improve on, just follow the link on my website at tinderbox.marketing, and you'll be able to fill out a quick questionnaire, and then it'll send me a notification when that's done, and I'll put together a review and follow up with you. If there are no final questions, then I would just like to thank you for your time. I appreciate you jumping on this webinar with me. I sincerely apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning. Wasn't quite aware what screen was sharing, and that was just a learning curve for me and how Keynote and Zoom play together. And I apologize for that. And then please pay attention to my YouTube channel and Facebook. I'll try to upload these videos to there, so you'll get last week's workshop and this week's. And then I'm hoping to do more workshops on Fridays in the future. If there are no other questions, I will end it. And I hope you all stay safe and healthy and have a wonderful weekend. Again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Josh@tinderbox.marketing, or you can just go to my website, tinderbox.marketing. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.